a 12-month certificate from Cyprus Credit Union. Learn more at cypruscu.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we'll see sunny skies the rest of today and tomorrow, and some storms are moving into the central and southern part of the state. Those will move north toward the end of the week. Right now, we're looking at 90 degrees and partly cloudy skies at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The headline today, and any moment actually, President Biden is going to officially celebrate the one-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act. Beyond the headline, the president has even wondered himself out loud if maybe he should have thought again about the name. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it has been 1 year since the Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law by President Biden. He did wonder out loud recently if he should have chosen another name. Kind of a think again moment for the president. We want to look beyond that headline, and we want to look at what actually is in the name and the bill, and maybe come up with a better name. Brian Riedel, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, focuses on budget, tax, economic policy, always helps us break it all down. And Brian, welcome back to the show. And we're 1 year in. Have we had any reduction in inflation according to the act?
Well, the inflation rate is somewhat lower today than it was a year ago, but the Inflation Reduction Act had nothing to do with it. In fact, the vast majority of its policies, A, have not even been implemented yet, and B, were estimated by most economists to have no effect whatsoever on inflation. That's according to the University of Pennsylvania. That's according to the Congressional Budget Office. The results were that, if anything, it might be modestly inflationary. So while the inflation rate is a little bit lower today, the credit for that goes to the Federal Reserve, not for this bill, as President Biden essentially admitted last week.
Yeah, and so as you look at that, I know one of the kind of fallbacks in terms of the defense of the Inflation Reduction Act was, well, maybe it won't reduce inflation, but it should actually help with the deficits. Are we 0 for 2, or did we see any gains there?
We're 0 for 2. Originally, as scheduled, the bill was supposed to increase deficits through 2026 and finally start saving money in 2027. Well, that was the original estimate. Since then, the energy provisions that were about $270 billion over 10 years have been re-estimated to $800 billion over 10 years. And this includes the electric vehicle incentives, which were originally supposed to cost $14 billion over the decade, and now are looking to cost $390 billion over the decade. That means that provision has gone over budget by 2,686%. So forget waiting until 2027 for this law to save money. It's never going to save money.
I just want to repeat that number just in case some of our listeners drove into the ditch in their electric vehicle. So the incentives that were part of the Inflation Reduction Act have come in 2,685% over budget.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's go to some of the other.
That's government for you.
Yeah, exactly. It not only did not save money, it was actually 2,685% over budget. Let's look at some of the other things in terms of some of the other tax credits, some of the more things that were really sold as the popular components to the Inflation Reduction Act. And it's going to be interesting to see what the president says here in the next few moments. But how are those things playing out?
Yeah, I mean, again, there were some health care tax credits in there, some health care savings that they kind of lied about the cost of the law there, too, in that they said that they were going to expire after 3 years. Of course, they're not going to expire after 3 years. For electricity and energy, again, there's some tax credits for families for electric vehicles. There are some business tax credits. There are some incentives for government to invest. At the same time, the law also has some tax hikes on investments in the tax portion of the bill that cancel the original tax credits out. So even the bill itself in parts contradicted each other by giving tax credits and then passing a minimum tax to cancel them out for businesses.
Wow. Okay, so I think we're at 0 for 3 at this point. I'm not sure if it's 3 strikes and you're out law in terms of the act itself. There seems to be more in there that, again, is just troubling. And the thing that's troubling to me is the fact that people are troubled by the outcomes. That, you've got people saying, "Oh, it's so much more than we thought. We're shocked that that the costs have come in so high."
Yeah, people are surprised, but shouldn't be. If you know anything about government, you know that these programs always come in far over budget, particularly mandatory programs. There's famous studies about how when Medicare and Medicaid were created in 1965, the assumption was that they would never be more than a small fraction of federal spending. And now they're the second and third biggest programs in the entire federal government, growing unsustainably. This is the story of government. They create these programs, and they go massively over cost because they have a tendency to downplay the costs when they pass the bill. They assume not a lot of people will sign up for the program or sign up for the tax credit, and the costs will be constrained. But politics. More people want free money. Costs grow. Inefficiencies build. They always go over budget.
Yeah, it is a vicious cycle there. As the president gets ready to tout this as one of his legislative accomplishments, what is it that you think he's going to try to sell? We know he realized it was a bad naming. We also know the president is struggling with the Bidenomics term. What do you expect him to frame today, or to attempt to frame, as he marks his anniversary?
He's finally moving away from the claim that it was about reducing inflation, which everyone knew at the time was just propaganda. Americans were worried about inflation, so they took out the same old liberal proposals and just slapped the words inflation reduction on it. And now they're admitting that, well, of course it was never about inflation. That was just an excuse to pass the bill. Ultimately, the president seems to be calling it now a long-term economic growth package to incentivize energy innovation, which, again, it really isn't. It's a lot of very expensive corporate handouts for clean energy, many of which are canceled out by the 15% minimum corporate tax that's in a different part of the bill. But the president is going to talk about, energy utopia, energy incentives, and economic growth, even though economists don't really take that seriously in this bill.
Fascinating stuff. And just one other fascinating thing. So the president has started to give this address marking this, and there is not a single cable channel in America that is covering it. So it is in the officially has entered the nothing to see here category as they try to shoo this thing along. Fascinating stuff. Brian, as always, we appreciate your perspective and breaking it down as we try to figure out what is the right path forward to things that will actually reduce inflation, reduce the deficit in the spending, and create a better economy for all the American people. But, Brian, we always appreciate you helping us breaking it down.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Fascinating stuff. Again, what's in a name? It's called Inflation Reduction Act. It has not reduced inflation. That hasn't been the component that has brought it down. It's been what the Fed has done in terms of raising interest rates. The overruns and the cost misestimates, non-estimates, underestimates, are extraordinary. They are head-scratching in the thousands of percentages over budget. So this is not going to reduce spending. It's not going to reduce deficits. And ultimately, it ends up hurting the American people. And that's the problem with all of this. You can come up with a catchy name and a nice bumper sticker slogan to go with it. But we come back to where we always come back, and that is the absolute predictability of consequences. And when you enact this kind of law, regardless of what you name it, the results are still the same, and the results aren't good for the economy or for the American people.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. The Recovery and Rebuild will take a generation.
The fire was moving at a mile a minute.
We ran out of the house. I'm lucky to be alive.
Destruction of Lahaina. There is very little left there.
Maui Strong, you're seeing it in full display as people are coming out of the woodworks to serve, to help.
During these times, Utahns pull together to help friends and communities in need. Please join us by donating to the disaster relief right at our website. Look for Maui Strong at kslnewsradio.com.
Have you struggled to get those extra pounds off? Have you dealt with emotional eating, bad habits, behaviors that have just led you down a bad path? I've been there. I've done that. You try all the different things, but you look for something that actually works. SOTA Weight Loss works. It's SOTA, stands for state-of-the-art weight loss, because it is. It's based on science. It has all the things you need to be successful. You have your own coach and dietitian. You meet one-on-one over the phone. You can also access them at any time to make sure you're staying on path and getting where you want to go, using food as fuel, not as an emotional crutch. I lost 37 pounds in 90 days. I'm over 20 months in, and guess what? Today, I am 37 pounds down. SOTA Weight Loss works. No one has ever asked me, Boyd, does SOTA work? They know it works because they can see the results. You can do the same. As I always say, when it comes to your SOTA Weight Loss journey, there's no time to lose. There's only time to win. So start winning with SOTA Weight Loss. Check it out at SOTA Weight Loss, SOTA-weightloss.com.
Summer might be over for the kids, but summer's not over for your air conditioners. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and we still have plenty of hot days left. So if you haven't had your air conditioner serviced yet, I got some good news for you. Today, Wednesday, August 16th, Any Hour Services is having a surprise one-day sale for any homeowners listening. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your air conditioner, but if you call today and mention this ad, we'll tune up your air conditioner for only $29. That's a $95 savings. Call Any Hour Services right now at 801-443-7400. Manufacturers say that annual maintenance can help your air conditioner cool your home better and prevent unexpected breakdowns. 801-443-7400. The biggest reasons people don't get their air conditioner serviced each year is because they forget. So right now, while you're thinking about it, call Any Hour Services, lock in a $95 savings, and schedule a $29 air conditioner tune-up. Call Any Hour Services right now at 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
What's the biggest threat to your retirement savings today? Believe it or not, it's taxes. That's right, you could be paying a lot more taxes in retirement than you realize. Learn more in a free report, 3 retirement tax traps that could wipe out your savings. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions, a 5-time winner of Utah's Best of State Award. This free report reveals how you could avoid 3 retirement tax traps that could needlessly cost you tens of thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. To get this free report, call 801-896-9622. Don't needlessly overpay your taxes in retirement. Get this free report now by calling 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622. Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
This is an important notice to consumers facing $10,000 or more in credit card debt, medical bills, or other unsecured debt. You may not be required to pay it all back because there are special programs that will significantly reduce the amount you owe if you qualify. Accredited Debt Relief has helped qualify consumers with over $1 billion in debt. This is not bankruptcy or a debt consolidation loan. For this free information, call 800-786-3400. That's 800-786-3400.
Troy, I'm depressed. Bitches RV and American Fork is killing it.
What's depressing about that?
Stewart's RV managers and staff are still here, so we've got the same incredible customer service.
That's good.
And we brought in new RV brands like Ember RV and GoPlay Travel Trailers.
Also good.
And now you can shop hundreds more RVs at bitches.com.
Still waiting for the sad part.
I'm used to being a mentor, but I'm turning into a manatee.
You do have the same shape. Bish's RV is now open in American Fork. Come see us at the previous Stewart's RV or at our North Salt Lake location. Bish's RV, where memories begin.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a worker was killed in an accident at a trailer manufacturing business in Clearfield this morning. Second, kids who spent the summer looking at their cell phones will have to leave them behind when they go back to school this week. And Lahaina was not the only town affected by the wildfires on Maui. Missionaries are helping out in the little town of Kula, about 40 miles away. Right now, 90 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Last night, I had the opportunity to moderate a debate between Celeste Malloy and Bruce Huff, two of the candidates for the 2nd Congressional District on the GOP primary side of the equation. We covered a wide variety of important issues. I want to highlight a couple of moments where I thought the candidates stood out and had some important things to say. And I want to reemphasize just how important I think these debates are and why it was a privilege to be part of that. You know, we've gotten into a bad habit in the country and right here in the state of Utah that we no longer have serious debates. The last time we had something for federal office where there was really a robust, rigorous, regular debate process goes all the way back to 2010. And since then, whether it was a Senate race, a House race, very few debates. No one seemed to be interested in that part of the process. And I think that is a sad thing, especially for those in our rural communities who aren't likely to have someone show up in their town. They become flyover counties, much the way the national candidates tend to fly over Utah as a flyover state. And so getting candidates into those places, I think both Bruce Huff and Celeste Malloy have done a great job in saying, yeah, let's go everywhere. Let's go all across the district and let's have real debates. They've been moderated by different GOP party officials. They've taken well over 200 questions from constituents, potential constituents and voters. And I think that's a healthy, robust thing. It causes candidates to focus and sharpen and get past the platitudes, to get past just the one-liners and the talking points, and because they have to differentiate. They have to be distinctive in what they're saying and how they're saying it. And I think that's good for debate. I think it's good for all of us as voters to be able to watch that play out and to listen a little bit differently. So I want to share a couple of moments from the debates last night that I thought were important. Bruce Huff hit government spending hard in many points throughout the day. He made it clear that he thinks Congress needs to get back to the simple getting the budget right and doing it better.
The problem we have here is that when you take in $5 trillion last year for the government to operate, which is way too much money, by the way, and you spend $6.5 trillion, you basically have just added to your debt. And what we need to do is actually have a budget in Congress. This means not only should we spend only what we collect, but we should find ways to reduce what we're spending to give back more money to the people of the state.
So I think that's an important component. The Internal Revenue Service brought in more money than it ever has in its history. Over $5 trillion, and yet Congress spent $6.5 trillion, so added another $1.5 trillion to the debt. I think that's an important conversation for the people of the 2nd Congressional District. I think it's an important conversation for all of us, regardless of where we live. We got to some of the contentious issues we've seen at the Supreme Court, some of those social issues. We talked about abortion. Celeste Malloy gave an answer on abortion in terms of not just looking at the policy of it all, where we often get hung up, but changing the conversation about how we have that conversation.
Too often we get caught up in the number of weeks or how to define exceptions. And what we really need to be focused on is how do we protect those who can't protect themselves? And that is the unborn. We need to be unapologetically pro-life. We can work out the details. But the right question is, how do we protect those who can't protect themselves? And I would like to see the states move on this. But as a federal representative, I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to sponsor legislation or vote for legislation that protects the rights of the unborn to be born.
So about halfway through the conversation last night, and again, that aired right here on KSL News Radio, also aired on KSL TV last night, I tried to channel my inner Dumbledore for you Harry Potter fans and talk about what we've talked about before on this show, that, you know what, it's easy to yell talking points at the opposition or at your enemies or opponents. It takes a lot more courage to stand up and tell the truth to your friends, especially when they're wrong. And so I asked the candidates that, okay, let's suppose you are elected. What are you going to stand up and tell your friends and new colleagues in Congress where they happen to be wrong? Here's what Celeste Malloy had to say.
I have to stand and tell my own team they're wrong about is entitlement reform. It's something that nobody wants to touch. It's one of those third rails in politics. But I don't know anybody my age who thinks that Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid will be solvent for us.
Probably one of the most honest answers I've heard on a debate stage in a very, very, very long time from either Republicans or Democrats who continue to put their head in the sand when it comes to dealing with entitlement programs. They are going to be insolvent. They are the major driver in our debt and deficit spending. And I think Celeste Malloy hit that one on the head and out of the park, that she needs to stand up to her colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle and say, we have to have a different conversation about entitlements. Because if we don't fix that, everything else is going to be window dressing. I think that was important. I also asked the candidates what they would and what they would not do as elected. This is important. A lot of times when people are campaigning, they're promising everything. We're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And you can't. You can't do it all. There's not enough hours in a day. There's not enough legislative days. You just cannot do it all. And so those who are most effective in Congress are very clear in terms of what they will do. They narrow that. Focus always precedes success. They are also very, very clear in terms of what they will not do. Here's how Bruce Huff answered that question.
I will not stand up in front of the camera and say that I am going to accomplish this grandiose thing when I know very clearly that it's just not possible. Hail Mary passes are great for Jim McMahon, but candidly, football's still a game of inches. And that's more of my style in finding and focusing on things that can get done.
And now let's take a listen to what Bruce said that he would focus on as a high priority.
The border control is the number one way, but another way we can do it is create a greater deterrent. Right now, if you are convicted of child sex trafficking, your sentence could be from 14 to life. 14 years is way too low a bar. If it isn't at 25 or 50, or even maybe we started at life, but we need to do something right now about child sex trafficking.
And here's what Celeste Malloy said she would do as a major focus.
I'm going to make sure that I'm on committees that are important to this district. I'm going to spend my time fighting federal government overreach. It's what I talk about. It's what I get excited about. I get really passionate when I talk about it because the structure of our Constitution is what makes sure our government is protecting the freedoms of the people. And in order to protect the freedoms of the people, our government is set up so that no branch is strong enough to violate people's freedoms. And right now, that's out of balance.
And then finally, here's what Celeste Malloy had to say that she would not do in Congress.
What I'm not going to do is get involved in things that belong to the states. Federalism is important. The federal government's powers are limited and few, and it's really tempting, once you get in office, to think that your opinion on everything is important and that you need to get involved in every issue. I'm not going to do that. I've been really disciplined on the campaign trail, and I'm going to make sure that by my actions, I show that I really do believe in federalism, in separation of powers, and in good representation, where I show up for the issues that matter for the constituents in my district.
So that's just a little sampling of the conversation last night between two of the candidates in the 2nd congressional race to replace Congressman Chris Stewart, who will be stepping down in September. And again, I think it was a good night of conversation. I think there was some great insight. I think there were some moments where, regardless of who you're really for or who you really want in that office, I think you could look at those candidates and say, I could see that person in the Hall of Congress, or I could see that person representing me, casting a vote on the floor of the House. And that's good. That's good for the state. That's good for the country to have voices like that and people who are willing to come to the stage and have a debate to defend issues and positions, ideas, and have a good, positive, forward-moving conversation about the things that actually matter the most. So it was a privilege to be part of that. It's always good to be part of a debate where the conversation is elevated and illuminating to the people that they represent. So we appreciate all of them being part of that. We're going to go ahead and step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next right here on KSL News Radio.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. The water emergency in Manaway is easing now after low-level water alarms went off early this morning. Officials found a problem with the main well's control panel, rendering the well unusable. They have a backup well that's now online. City officials are asking residents to limit their water use at home to indoors only. The progress of the main well's repairs can be found on the City of Manaway website. Ballots have gone out for those who have an election coming up, and there's been a big dip in the number of Utahns using drop boxes to return their ballots this past midterm.
86% of voters in 19 and 20 used drop boxes. In 22, It went down to 58%.
Weber County Clerk Ricky Hatch says the reason was misinformation. He says a movie called 2000 Mules alleged people were out stuffing ballot boxes. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Deanne Criswell, the administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, spoke at the White House briefing today following her visit to Maui. Criswell promised the residents of Maui that their federal family, including FEMA and President Biden, are prepared to assist in their recovery as long as they'll need.
And while the people of Hawaii are in mourning, and as we mourn as a nation with them, I am filled with hope as they bravely begin to take the steps that are needed to heal and recover.
106 people have been confirmed dead in the wildfire disaster so far. That number expected to rise. Taking a look at your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average is down 164 points on the day. The NASDAQ down 126. And our KSL weather, it looks like sunshine today and tomorrow, and then possibly storms moving in. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
Hercules Credit Union is always about growing stronger together. They've been at this for a long time. They've been offering the highest of quality financial services all the way back to 1946. Started small, built smart, just the way you want to build your money. Right now, you have a chance to go for the gold. You can open a checking account at Hercules Credit Union, and if you qualify for their gold tier status within the first 90 days, they'll deposit $200 into your account. That's simple. Just mention you heard this ad on KSL. Open that checking account, hit gold tier status in the first 90 days, and you'll get an extra $200 deposited into your account. Plus, you get all the benefits of being gold tier status in your checking. You get ID protection, identity theft protection, cellular care coverage, travel benefits, and a host of other things. It's the perfect time for you to go for the gold. Right now with Hercules Credit Union, you can find their locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, or Salt Lake City. And as always with our friends at Hercules Credit Union, you can find them online at HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
If you own a small to medium-sized business that kept employees on payroll through COVID, you may have a big cash refund waiting for you. The Employee Retention Credit is a tax credit of up to $26,000 per employee. And now, more businesses than ever qualify. The experts at RefundsPro.com specialize in cutting through the red tape of qualifying for this government program. Most of their refunds are over $100,000. Even businesses that have received PPP funds may be eligible. And there are absolutely no fees unless you receive a refund. So there's no reason not to apply. If your business experienced shutdowns, limited capacity, supply chain challenges, or reduced revenue due to COVID, you likely qualify. RefundsPro.com has already helped hundreds of businesses. So don't lose the refund you're owed by missing the deadline. Get started today with a free 5-minute questionnaire at RefundsPro.com. That's refunds with an S, pro.com.
Introducing Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Call Yes today and we'll waive the service call fee with any HVAC, plumbing, or electrical system repair. The expert technicians at Yes are available 7 days a week to fix all of your heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical problems. Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. Proudly serving Utah for more than 45 years. Call now or visit theyesmancan.com for details, terms, and conditions.
2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
There's desperation and anguish.
More than 80,000 Afghans have since arrived in America, but this story is still unfolding. I'm Andrea Smartin. In my new podcast, Stranger Becomes Neighbor, we'll find out what happens to these new arrivals in our communities. Who would help our newest neighbors? Follow us at kslpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.
Any Hour Services can make sure your AC keeps you cool this summer. Whether you need a tune-up, repair, or just a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meeks.
We have a crash in American Fork in Utah County. This is actually by I-15. It's eastbound Pioneer Crossing at the Main Street on-ramp. If you're going to be Lehigh Main Street, but also right at the border of Lehigh and American Fork. If you're going to be traveling that area, watch for emergency crews at the scene. Looks like they are partially blocking a left lane of traffic. With over 30-plus specialties and multiple locations across Utah, Revere has you covered for all your health needs. Revere Health, your partner in health, your partner for life. Online at reverehealth.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, well, we've got the sunshine through the rest of today, and then we have thunderstorms that have been affecting the central and southern part of the state, moving northward, and we could see some of those tomorrow. Right now, it's 91 degrees and sunny at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We're going to shift our attention now to the international front and look at China in particular. But as we begin this segment, I have to tell you, one of the questions I get asked the most by people is, how do you prepare every day for a radio show? And there's two answers to that. First is you have to have the best producer in the business, which I have in Bella Pinnock. And the second thing is you need Olivier Knox and the Daily 202. And if you have those two things, you can do a great show every day. And we're really thrilled to have the second half of the duo. Bella's in the booth. Olivier Knox is on the line. Of course, he's the national political correspondent and anchor of that critical resource, the Daily 202 at the Washington Post. Olivier, welcome back to the show.
Thanks very much. You know I'll do the show even if you don't say such nice things about me.
Yeah. We just like having you on because we love where you take the conversation. And the way you framed the China conversation, we've been having conversations about China for decades and decades and decades, and they seem to shift. And you got to a really interesting perspective on this, and I think some pretty haunting things that we ought to be looking at as a country as well. But you start off talking about something that George W. Bush revealed. Share that with us.
Yeah, this is because of what I do. I had to read President Bush's memoirs, which are called Decision Points. And there are a couple of fun nuggets in there. One has to do with his childhood French lessons, but that's not why I'm on the show.
We'll save that for another day.
Yes, we will. He relates in the book that he would ask the same question of every world leader the first time that they met. He would ask them, what keeps you up at night? Now, that's a book I would read. I would absolutely read a book of every world leader Bush ever met and how they answered that question. But he only gives us Chinese President Hu Jintao. And what Hu Jintao told George W. Bush is that his biggest worry was that he had to create 25 million new jobs every year to keep up with population growth. Now, as Bush relates in part, it showed he worried about the impact of disaffected, unemployed masses. It explained his government's policies in resource-rich places like Iran and Africa. And so Bush, I think, does find this really interesting and important. And the reason I brought it into this conversation is that yesterday I was reading up on the latest China news, and it seemed to me that we really need to talk about China's economic problems right now.
And so let's dive into that. You kind of framed it in terms of this ticking time bomb, and especially that component with the young and unemployed leads to disaffection and a whole lot of bad things, especially for dictators.
Right. I mean, one of the reasons I was looking at the Chinese economic news is that President Biden last week said that China was a ticking time bomb. And he specifically mentioned slumping economic growth and more people who are retiring than people working age, things like that. And he concluded when bad folks have problems, they do bad things. So this is obviously geopolitically important. But yeah, there's been a burst of unhappy economic news coming out of China. So among other things, they've decided to stop reporting the unemployment rate for workers ages 16 to 24. That they claim it has to do with methodology. The more likely reason is that number has set a bunch of record highs this year, and in June it was as high as 21.3%. It's not the only economic indicator they've stopped reporting. The Financial Times in late 2022 documented that China had, after being fairly transparent for years, China was really cutting back, and they just stopped disclosing a whole bunch of economic indicators as its growth slowed. So while they were roaring ahead at like 8-9% annual growth, they were happy to share the information. When the growth slumped, they cut back. But what we do have is we have Barclays Bank saying that their gross domestic product this year is not going to grow as fast as they thought because of a crisis in their housing market. Retail sales, industrial output, and investment were lower than expected, lower than forecast in July. The central bank there cut a key interest rate by the largest amount that it has since 2020. That's in response to, as Bloomberg put it, a worsening property slump and weak consumer spending. So you have a sort of a collection of bad information. Yeah. And I thought it was useful. I thought it would be useful to put them all in one place and tell a more complete story.
Yeah, and that story is one we all should be thinking about. I was kind of chuckling as I was going through all of those numbers and what they're choosing to report. I've poked a little bit at those in the economics spaces who went from reporting inflation to core inflation to super core, and it's like we keep taking all the expensive things out so the number sounds better until suddenly there's nothing less to report. So it's life is good, but you can't buy bread or a house, and I think that's part of the challenge. And this is where I want to get to, Olivier, and I love how you do this. Is so you take all of that framing and you have this wonderful line in the middle there. I think that is the linchpin to it all, and it's the fact that they're in this position where the number of people who are retiring are larger than the number of people who are working age. And both my producer Bella and I, when we were reading through this, we looked over and says, "This is like preview of coming attraction material."
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's the thing is when you look at all these things in one place, it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary because it's going to have knock-on effects for the American economy. One of the things with just to give you a simple example, one of the problems that they have is their housing market. Their housing market is they overbuilt, and so a lot of the construction companies and housing companies are in trouble. Well, one of the ways that affects America is that those companies aren't rushing to buy new John Deere equipment. They're not rushing to buy new Caterpillar equipment. Right. And so you've got warning signs in the American economy from sectors that depend on selling to China. And that's, a lot of American banks and Wall Street have rolled back their forecast of a recession, saying, no, it looks like we're in for a soft landing. But obviously, we are dependent in part on Chinese consumption.
Yeah. That interconnectedness in the economies between the U.S. and China is always fascinating to look at. Great piece, as always. The Daily 202 at the Washington Post is where you can check that out. Olivier Knox, we always appreciate you carving out time in your very busy schedule to help us connect all the dots and make the news make sense. Thanks for jumping on with us today.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right, that's Olivier Knox, national political correspondent and anchor of the Daily 202 at the Washington Post. That's some scary numbers to me because I see a lot of that reflected not just in the interconnectedness of the U.S. and China, but it also shows a lot of the softness in the underbelly of the U.S. economy. That makes me nervous. We'll be right back.
Soon, this hot summer will give way to shorter days, beautiful colors, sunshine that seems a little dimmer. And before we know it, we're back to school shopping and cheering for our favorite football team. As the season changes, so will the news and weather. And we'll be here to cover it all. Plus, BYU sports coverage and traffic updates to get you to the game on time. KSL News Radio, your year-round companion for news.
What is the biggest threat to your retirement savings today? Believe it or not, it's taxes. That's right. You could be paying a lot more taxes in retirement than you realize. Learn more in a free report. 3 retirement tax traps that could wipe out your savings. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions, a 5-time winner of Utah's Best of State Award. This free report reveals how you could avoid 3 retirement tax traps that could needlessly cost you tens of thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. To get this free report, call 801-896-9622. Don't needlessly overpay your taxes in retirement. Get this free report now by calling 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Summer might be over for the kids, but summer's not over for your air conditioners. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and we still have plenty of hot days left. So if you haven't had your air conditioner serviced yet, I got some good news for you. Today, Wednesday, August 16th, Any Hour Services is having a surprise one-day sale for any homeowners listening. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your air conditioner, but if you call today and mention this ad, we'll tune up your air conditioner for only $29. That's a $95 savings. Call Any Hour Services right now at 801-443-7400. Manufacturers say that annual maintenance can help your air conditioner cool your home better and prevent unexpected breakdowns. 801-443-7400. The biggest reasons people don't get their air conditioner serviced each year is because they forget. So right now, while you're thinking about it, call Any Hour Services, lock in a $95 savings, and schedule a $29 air conditioner tune-up. Call Any Hour Services right now at 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
When I lost weight on the SOTA weight loss program, I thought that I would be the primary beneficiary of that endeavor. And I am, certainly. I'm healthier. I feel great. I have more energy. My morning routine takes half the time. But you know what I'm thinking about right now, Tim, is the benefit to my family. My children, I am convinced, eat healthier because I do. And now I don't pig out anymore. I don't suggest that we go get ice cream at 11 o'clock at night on a weekend. I eat healthier and they eat what I eat.
Well, some of those crutch snack foods aren't on the shelf anymore in the pantry. My daughter discovered the exact same thing. Amber lost 42 pounds. And here's the thing. Every week as you watch and you go through this journey, they will make tweaks. If you're losing too much, they'll add something in. If you're gaining a couple of pounds, they'll take something out. It's a great program that is fit to you. Go to SOTAweightloss.com, spelled S-O-T-A. Think Tim and Amanda. It's state-of-the-art.
The name's Osborne, Josh Osborne, and I'm so excited to announce our 00 summer sale here at Volkswagen Southtown.
Summers are for thrills, chills, and hot deals. Get a new high-tech VW for nothing down and no payments for 90 days. Our 00 agents are standing by to make sure you pay nothing down and have no payments for 3 months, so you can achieve your top secret mission this summer.
Come see why we're Utah's #1 Volkswagen dealer. Get to VWSouthtown.com.
2022 VW ranking. Financing through VCI on select models OAC. See dealer for details.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the water emergency in the town of Mattaway is easing up with a backup well online, but outdoor watering is still restricted. Second, more people are mailing in ballots, fewer using drop boxes in Utah's recent elections. And third, the head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency says she was impressed by the spirit of the people in Maui after the catastrophic wildfire in Lahaina. Right now, 91 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
For many school districts across the state, today's the first day of school. For families of refugees, sending their kids to new school in the U.S. can come with all kinds of extra challenges. And we have many refugees here in the state of Utah, including from Afghanistan, where education for women and girls, of course, has been banned under the Taliban. But many Utahns are trying to help make that transition for refugees here in the state of Utah, going to school just a little bit easier. And someone who's been in the middle of that and who has written extensively about that is Holly Richardson. Of course, she's the editor of Utah Policy and a columnist for the Deseret News. And Holly, great to have you in studio today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So let's start with the refugee kids here in the state of Utah. Some of the challenges that they face going in, some of the school districts have challenges as well. Give us some perspective.
Yeah, you bet. So if you can imagine, you're coming from potentially a war zone or maybe a refugee camp is the only thing you've known. You finally make it into the United States, and you're not only you as a child exposed to everything new, but your parents now are trying to navigate the system that they've never encountered before, right? Some places, of course, have had regular education if you've got a refugee coming from Ukraine, for example. But if you're coming from a refugee camp in Sudan or Somalia, or like you just said, Afghanistan, it's a whole new system. And it can really be overwhelming, especially when you don't speak the language. And so what we know is we have about 70,000 refugees who live in Utah. Of the refugee students, about 3/4 of them actually live in Granite School District. And so they have just a very large and diverse population. In fact, when I talked to Ben Horsley, who's the chief of staff for the Granite School District, he said that they speak 100 different languages in the homes of students who attend Granite School District.
Wow.
So one of the things they face is just, what is school and how do I sign up?
Yeah, that's a lot of, that's like the United Nations in a school district.
It is, yeah.
Fascinating. And so as they try to navigate that, what are some of the things that is happening, particularly in the Granite School District, as you have written about, that they're doing to try to help kind of grease the skids and ease that process?
So they actually have quite an extensive plan for brand new refugees versus ongoing refugees. So they actually have a center where they can go, both the students and the parents, but they'll take the students, they'll give them an introduction to school. This is how you find the bathroom. This is how you do lunch. This is how you get food. This is where you go for class. But they also have mentors that they assign with the families so that they can keep track of them. So, for example, you may get started in September. Say you come from Sudan, you have no idea what snow is, and you have no idea what a snow day is, right? And so you've got somebody there who can help the parents navigate that. And in some societies, some cultures, parents would not be asking teachers questions. They would not be pushing back in any way. They would not say, I don't think my child's needs are getting met, right? So they're learning to navigate that as well. So what they have set up in Granite is this not a peer program within the schools for the students, but they also have a mentoring program for parents.
Oh, that's so important because, those parents navigating things like, okay, it's a snow day.
Right.
None of us would think about how do you navigate that. You know,
Right.
kids are home.
Kids
you're
are
at
home,
work, you
right?
have to-
But what if you don't know that a snow day means you don't have school? Then maybe you're going to send your kids to school and there's nobody there.
Yeah. And how do you get them back and all of those kinds of things? What are some of the other things that you found that were maybe a little surprising in terms of helping people navigate this new system as refugees here in the state?
Look, I think one of the things that people take for granted is that we have a certain culture, and we think that our culture is everyone's culture. And I had experience as an adoptive parent of bringing kids from other countries who were older, and the tests that we have that we think are unbiased are very biased, right? They're biased to our Western culture. And so it's simple things like, how do you navigate going to the grocery store? If you're used to having almost no food options, and you walk into an American grocery store, it can be overwhelming.
The potato chip aisle alone
Right?
is daunting.
Right. And that's something that we totally don't think would be an issue. It's like, well, wouldn't everybody
How
be
do you
grateful that
choose?
there's so much? Well, sure, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating stuff. I want to shift gears just a little bit on something else you've written this week that has been something that I have just kept coming back to, and I just keep thinking about it. And I have felt that both in Ukraine and in Afghanistan, that freedom has a very simple face, and it's a female face. And I think that's where it was happening and where it will continue to happen. And you wrote very powerfully about the women, as we talk about going back to school, that now suddenly these young girls and women who were able to be educated, to go to school, to work in government and jobs and start businesses are suddenly back under the Taliban. Give us a sense of where are we and what does that look like 2 years in?
Well, it's terrible. They're the worst nation in the world for women's rights and girls' rights. So when the Taliban took over 2 years ago yesterday, they promised that girls could continue to go to school and they were going to be a more moderate Taliban. That was not true. Within a few months, they shut down schools for girls over 6th grade. Within a few months after that, they shut down universities, anybody who was already attending, right? So they had stopped entrance, but then they shut down who could go, who was already attending. One of the things that happened that was very disturbing is they stopped allowing women to work with NGOs, so non-governmental organizations, nonprofit organizations.
Yeah.
And they have an entire country who's dependent on foreign assistance. And now they said no women can work there. And so many of the organizations have pulled out and said we cannot support this type of repression.
Yeah.
In July, if you can believe it, they actually shut down beauty salons because they said it was influencing women to take on Western ideals, and it was costing men too much money for weddings. So now they don't even have beauty salons. They're gone.
Oh, my goodness. So as you look at the path forward, what do you see? Is there any hope in any of those places or spaces? I know a lot of the women have gone underground to teach those young girls, and my sense is they'll probably have to stay underground and deal with a lot of persecution in the short run. But what do you see for the long term?
You know, one of the news reports that I saw talked to a woman in Afghanistan who said basically because they had tasted freedom before, they had tasted the ability to educate their girls, that they were never going to be able to go back. And even if it cost them their lives, they were not going to go back. So I think you will see protests. I think you will see ongoing repression. But I think in the long term, what you will see is a stronger society. If they can learn to honor their women and to value the women in their society, they'll come out they're stronger for it. But until then, the women are going to continue to meet underground, and they'll do it at the cost of their lives. They know it, potentially.
Yeah. Freedom has a very feminine face in that part of the world, and I think that will continue to be the case. We talked yesterday about some of those women that the United States needs to honor some promises to, those who were part of special forces, protecting the United States military and being part of that equation. And we have a number of them that we need to make sure we're fulfilling those promises. As you look at it from kind of a larger geopolitical, you've been around the world and you've dealt with a lot of those NGOs. What does that do to pull all the women out of that? To me, that's a scary thing.
Well, first of all, women are key players in all NGOs, right?
Yeah.
Where we tend to be the ones who step up and say, yeah, I'll work with a nonprofit, right? Because obviously there's not a lot of money in nonprofits, especially working in that area of the world. But it has a really significant impact, and it has a ripple impact. So not only are those women not working, but because they are not allowed to work, if the organizations pull out, then it's the women and their families, it's the community, right? Because they're not going to get the assistance that they need.
Right.
You even have women who can't travel to get to somewhere to deliver a baby safely, right? Because they can't travel without a male relative, and if they don't have somebody there. I mean, just think about the logistics of how do you function as a woman in society if you have to have a chaperone everywhere you go, even to the midwife.
Wow.
Right. So very difficult. Very difficult. And I think I love your saying that the face of freedom is a woman. I think that's accurate.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue to watch that and see that play out. Holly Richardson, of course, editor of Utah Policy and a columnist for the Deseret News. Holly, always appreciate your perspective, and this is an important one. We welcome all of those refugees to the state and to those kids that are starting school for the first time. We welcome you to the state of Utah as well. And yes, freedom will have a very feminine face in Ukraine, in Afghanistan, and around the world, as that commitment to teach that next generation of young women is what it's all about. Well, that wraps up hour number one of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for top of the hour news. Much more. Hour number two coming up on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. The city of Mattaway issued a code red because of their main water well going down this morning. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera has more.
Low-level water alarms went off early this morning at Mattaway's water plant, and through process of elimination, they discovered a problem with the main well's control panel. A backup well has been brought online, but Harper Johnson, Mattaway's Public Works Director, is asking residents for help while they repair it.
We just are going to ask that the residents do not use any outside water.
Harper said the backup well has enough water for indoor needs, but residents should be cognizant of their water usage today outside of their immediate household needs. Eric Cabrera, KSL News Radio.
And residents can find repair updates at MattawayUtah.org. Cedar High School had a lockdown on the first day of classes today. Cedar City police say a suspicious person was spotted near a building. The lockdown ended after that person was taken into custody. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. North Korea has acknowledged holding a U.S. Army private who crossed over the DMZ last month. The State Department says it's aware of that report. Spokesperson Vedant Patel says they're willing to talk to North Korea about bringing him home.
We cannot verify the comments attributed to Private King. What I will say is, though, that we remain focused on his safe return.
And King reportedly said he was unhappy with his treatment in the U.S. Army. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down 180 points as we near the close of trading. The NASDAQ is down 156 today. And our KSL weather, we could see some thunderstorms moving up from the south tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
This summer, the political season heats up.
By August, it'll be time for debates. Can you believe it?
We're planning coverage of the real issues, the important stories that impact how we live.
Listen each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Getting close to retirement? Or have you retired? You've probably got a ton of stress-filled questions on your mind. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth. Getting a second opinion with an individualized investment plan is vital, and our fiduciary advisors do just that. Take it from this Trajan Wealth client.
It was just so pleasant, so comfortable. I think we had 7 different accounts, just stuff scattered all over the place. And then so we just started, here's this, move this. And he even explained it a couple different times. But if I have more questions, he said, just give us a call. And that's what I love. He's a phone call away. I'm glad I know these guys. Such a huge weight off my shoulder.
Imagine not second-guessing investments or monthly retirement income. That's the peace of mind you'll get from working with Trajan Wealth. Call 801-899-7600 today or visit TrajanWealth.com.
Actual client, no compensation, no conflicts. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Does your company offer health insurance to your employees? If so, how do you know if you're getting the best deal on employee benefits? Did you know that a benefit broker makes more money when you spend more? Brokers are not only incentivized to steer you to more expensive insurance plans, but the more quotes they get, the harder they have to work and the less money they make. My name is Keith with Magellan and Linden. We're a different kind of benefits broker that offers a best plan, best price guarantee. We get insurance quotes from every insurance company every year. It forces insurance companies to compete for your business and offer the best deal possible. Here's what you do. Visit shopmyplan.com. We'll get you free quotes with no strings attached. If you like what you see, let's work together, and you'll get the best plan at the best price. If your benefits broker isn't getting quotes from every insurance company every year, you're probably paying too much. So visit shopmyplan.com today to get the best deal on employee health insurance. Go to shopmyplan.com today.
Hi, we're Comparion Insurance Agency. Right now you're thinking, Comparion, never heard of them. We know. We also know that you have no idea that Comparion Insurance agents are local and provide expert advice. So to help it stick, we're going to say local agent 4 times in the next 15 seconds. Ready? Go. Our local agents know you and your community. Our local agents offer insurance from top carriers. Our local agents have minty fresh breath.
Find us at ComparionInsurance.com. Comparion Insurance Agency. Local agents, expert advice.
And there's number 4.
Have you ever noticed that when the afternoon light hits your floors, you can see everything, including dust?
So much dust.
And that floor dust gets kicked up into the air, compromising the quality of air you and your family breathe.
Eesh.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper is the fast and easy way to clean your floors with ultra-thick pads that trap and lock dust before it gets in the air. Just a couple minutes a day.
And dust is gone.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper. Proud partner of the American Lung Association.
Advanced Window Products. Factory direct affordable windows. Call today and they're on their way. Financing available. Save now, pay later. 801-850-9100 or advancedwindowsusa.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
Well, the crash we had eastbound Pioneer Crossing at the on-ramp to I-15 has cleared, and we are back to a crash-free commute on all the Valley freeways and our main secondaries. Fill up your bucket list in Box Elder County. History, recreation, and wildlife, along with excellent dining and shopping, await you. Find out more at visitboxeldercounty.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we have sunshine for the rest of the day. Tomorrow, though, we could see some thunderstorms moving up from the south, and also a little higher high for the day, 98 tomorrow. Right now, we're at 91 in Salt Lake City under sunny skies at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The Biden administration is currently continuing on with Iran over the release of American hostages that have been unlawfully detained in the country. However, the specifics and implications of the deal, including the $6 billion that would be unfrozen currently in South Korea, are causing many people to raise the warning flag. Beyond the headline of "This is great to get the freedom for some Americans," there's some things under the headlines in terms of ripple effect and unintended consequences that we might want to think again about. So let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
We're really thrilled to continue a conversation that we have been having for the last little while, dealing with the $6 billion going to Iran in a hostage deal. The implications of that, what does it really mean, and the impact both in the U.S. and in the Middle East as well. And we're really pleased to have joining us on the show today Behnam Ben Taleblu, who is a senior fellow at FDD, where he focuses on Iranian security and political issues. And thanks so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So let's get past just the headlines of the numbers. I think a lot of people said, "Wow, $6 billion. That's a large amount of money going to really being freed up that was frozen that goes to Iran." Give us some of the implications in terms of what is this from a policy standpoint, and what precedents does it set that we might be thinking about?
Well, unfortunately, this is a problem that's about to get from really bad to quite worse, and that's putting it mildly. You know, the Islamic Republic has been around for 44 years, and during these 4 decades, it was actually the act of international hostage-taking, the overrunning of the U.S. Embassy in November 1979, that led to the divorce of the U.S. and Iran, and that ultimately has colored relations ever since. And in the past 4 decades, the Islamic Republic has actually stepped up international hostage-taking. Its proxies have done it. You know, Lebanese Hezbollah has done it on Iran's behalf globally. And the regime has talked quite openly about being willing to do this to extract concessions, to get money. So there's been a strategic hostage-taking, a hostage diplomacy, you could say. And by really being able to give Iran $1.2 billion per hostage, because that's technically what it amounts to if you do the math, you have just incentivized the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism with a demonstrated track record of hostage diplomacy, who has proxies who have done hostage-taking, and who has global state partners like Russia, which has used the detainee issue against Americans to take more hostages. So I would expect a surge, not just in terms of the foreign citizens and dual nationals, in particular the Iranian Americans who come and go between the U.S. and Iran and who see their families, You've just put a target on all of their heads. Tehran can collect on them more. But also, I would expect Iran's state-level partners like Russia and China to find a way to add hostage-taking into their array of threats they already pose against the U.S.
Yeah, and so taking it beyond that, let's zero in a little bit in terms of what does it mean in terms of Iran specifically. You and some of your colleagues there at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy have talked about the fact that this strengthens the Ayatollah. Clearly, the cash flow will aid in their pursuit of nuclear weapons. Give us a sense of where you see that standing.
Well, domestically, because money is fungible, even if there is no sanctions busting, even if there is no violation of the humanitarian accounts here, and trust me, the regime also has a track record of doing that as well. For instance, in places like Turkey, where there used to be other humanitarian lock provisions, Tehran would engage in dubious business practices like over-invoicing and hawala, of course, to get money that it could actually later on have as cash on hand to fund its proxies, its missiles, its drones, its nuclear program, and whatnot. And so even if you have, clear compliance, which is highly unlikely because the U.S. government has not even been able to articulate how it plans to monitor and defend this architecture, and now with the money moving from South Korea to Switzerland to Qatar, that raises a lot of questions as to, aren't you just going to be putting Iran's nuclear program on steroids? Aren't you going to be putting its drone proliferation, which already, that's Iran is aiding and abetting Russia's war against Ukraine through the provision of drones on steroids. And this is a regime that has been able to pinch pennies to pose a major asymmetric threat. And I would expect those asymmetric threats to unfortunately grow because of this.
Wow. So many implications. The complexities and the interconnectedness of all of this is pretty stunning. When I had not connected that in thinking in terms of drones going to Russia for the war in Ukraine. And those kinds of connections and interconnections, I think, are things that we have to really weigh in. It's been interesting to see the administration has been defending this, saying, well, this really isn't a payment. This was their money anyway. Kind of walk us through that. What does that really look like? What's the practicalities of all of that?
This is a fascinating talking point, and actually I was doing Persian language media, diaspora media yesterday talking about this, and by people who tend to be deal defenders and, skeptics of international pressure on Iran. This is one of their first lines of defense of such an agreement, which in my view is indefensible. The Trump administration got, previously 2 American hostages out without having to pay a penny, not just a penny of U.S. taxpayer money, but not just a penny of Iranian money. And in this case, you have 4 decades of the Islamic Republic using its oil wealth for nefarious purposes to create a more robust Islamist authoritarian national security state that represses its own people, to export this Islamist authoritarian national security model into the heartland of the Middle East in places like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, where it has proxies and partners that violently carry out, the regime's views and values and interests. And then, of course, there's the idea of Iran being able to use its oil money to basically fund terrorism and those strategic programs that we talked about, nuclear, missile, and military. So it is irrelevant if it is American money or Iranian money in terms of the larger things that this would fund. It is relevant because you don't want to be directly paying for this, but this is the U.S. indirectly, paying for this. And what I mean by that is, when the U.S. designed this sanctions architecture between 2010 and 2013 that would lock up Iranian oil revenues, its fear was not that American or European money would be funding terrorism or would be funding something else. It was that even revenues earned for Iran in places like India, China, South Korea, Japan, that were still buying even lesser volumes of Iranian oil could still be used to fund this. So this argument that it is not American money and therefore we shouldn't care how it's spent is absolutely irrelevant, and it is ignorant of the way we have established in the past few years the sanctions architecture, because if you're the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism, you're going to be using any money to continue to engage in these behaviors.
So give us a sense, and you alluded to a lot of this in terms of the Iran nuclear deal and what has and hasn't happened there, and there's a host of these sanctions that have been kind of semi-lifted or money continues to flow through regardless. Give us kind of a state and standing of that, and what should we be keeping our eye on as all of this continues to move forward?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned what we should be keeping our eye on, because the Biden administration, in my view, is trying to do an end round around the American public, an end run around even the U.S. Congress, and try to somehow indirectly, informally attach some kind of strategic understanding to the hostage diplomacy it's been engaging in indirectly with the Iranians. And what I mean by that is, with the Biden administration, actually even the Biden campaign before they entered office, talked about getting a longer and stronger, bigger, broader, better deal than the 2015 deal known as the JCPOA. They said Trump was wrong to leave it, and they wanted to resurrect it and build on it. So they wanted to go greater. But when negotiations started in April 2021, they dropped that talking point altogether. For about a year and a half, perhaps, they said their goal was clean JCPOA resurrection, merely getting back that international predicate, merely getting back that 2015 deal, knowing full well that the politics and the nuclear program of 2021, 2022 can't really match the politics and the nuclear program of 2015. Then, since they failed in that endeavor, they've been trying to go for some kind of informal interim deal, and when that failed, they've been looking for something like an unwritten understanding, kind of a gentleman's agreement, if you will. That's kind of where we are now. You see a lot of reporting, particularly last Friday in the Wall Street Journal, about the pace of Iran's uranium enrichment dropping a little bit, even though its overall stockpile continues to grow. There's little signs that Tehran may be trying to give a wink and a nod to the Biden administration, which, so long as there are at least one or two downward painting arrows, I think the administration might politically sell this to some of its supporters to say, listen, this is just enough to get to 2024. No bomb, no war. Let's go deal with something else. And that really defines, the Biden administration's overall view of Iran. And they've inherited the Trump sanctions. They don't want to pay the political cost of removing them. They don't want to pay the political cost of really enforcing them. And they're kind of letting things atrophy. The problem with this entire view is that it divorces the adversary, divorces the Iranians of any agency. And when you've seen Iran's nuclear program grow in scale and scope, actually, not ironically, it's grown in more dangerous ways since President Biden has come in. Because in the mind of the adversary over there in Tehran, they see this as restraint, and they see restraint as something that you can capitalize on because the adversary may be afraid. So in this sense, this is Iran seeing our restraint, our goodwill as fear, and them actually pressing ahead. Wow. And we have gone to near weapons-grade uranium enrichment by Iran. Earlier this spring, Iran went to almost 84% purity. Weapons-grade uranium is 90% purity. When we dropped one of those two atomic bombs on Japan, one plutonium, one uranium, the uranium one was enriched to 80% purity. So let me say again, they have enriched in the past to 84% purity. Yeah. This is a game changer.
Wow. Thank you so much for giving us the nuances and the depth in terms of this conversation. We're going to stay with this. This is an important one for us to keep our eye on as we continue to move forward. Behnam Ben Taleblu, a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, grateful for your perspective, your insight, and helping us connect the dots as it relates to all of this. Thanks so much for joining us today.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me.
There's so many lessons in there, and I think one of the things that Behnam said at the end about the fact that if we function from a position of weakness, or if we are constantly just trying to ratchet things down for the sake of ratcheting them down, if the United States is functioning from a position of weakness, the scale and scope of Iran's power and their weapons will expand and increase. And that's not good for the freedom of American citizens, and it's not good for the freedom of the country.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. BYU's Big 12 season can't start soon enough.
He's going to go 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown!
This Monday, join us for the premiere of Cougar Nation. Cougar Nation. BYU insider Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte look ahead to opening day. The new, bigger Big 12. And they take your calls, BYU fans. That's this Monday night, 6 to 7. Cougar Nation. On KSL News Radio.
Quality, speed, value for your money, and $1,000 off any roof replacement. That's the IWC advantage. IWC, Intermountain West Contractors, delivers on the things most important to you when it comes time to replace your roof. There could be a dozen different reasons why your roof needs replacement, but just one answer to the problem: IWC. With IWC, you get quality because roof replacement is their specialty, and each job comes complete with the best warranties from the most trusted roofing material manufacturer in America. You get speed because IWC understands your time is valuable. In most cases, they can replace an entire roof in just one day. And with IWC, there's the value of knowing they use top-tier quality materials in every installation and deliver it all at an affordable price. And now, for a limited time, save $1,000 on a roof replacement project. Visit IWCroofing.com or call 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690.
At Fisher Investments, our clients know we have their backs.
How do your clients know that?
Because Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, the highest standard for a financial advisor. It means we're there for our clients and always put their interests first.
So wait, you do it because you have to?
No, we do it because it's the right thing to do. Our clients trust us with their retirement savings, and we know how important that responsibility is. So we take the time to really get to know them.
Get to know them how?
We make sure we understand their unique goals, finances, health, family, and lifestyle so we can tailor their portfolio to their specific needs. Our goal is to help them achieve a comfortable retirement.
Sounds like a big responsibility. You must make big commissions then, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We have one single transparent fee that's structured so we do better when our clients do better. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you are switching to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly different money management.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, outdoor watering banned in Manaway until the city can get its main well fixed. All water use was banned for a short time this morning. Second, a high school in Cedar City had a lockdown on the first day of school. It ended after a suspicious person was taken into custody. And third, the State Department says it's willing to talk to North Korea about bringing an Army private home after he crossed the border. Right now, 91 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, as we continue to follow the presidential politics, the early states, of course, are critical. As you look at that election process, we've been covering, in particular this week, what's been happening at the Iowa State Fair. It's one of those phenomenons in our country that candidates from both political parties show up at the Iowa State Fair. They look at the butter cow, they eat something fried on a stick, have a pork chop, flip some burgers, and have a conversation with the governor at the Fairside Chat. And we've been covering a number of the candidates who were there over the weekend and the early parts of the week, and we're going to continue that coverage. The governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds, held a face-to-face Q&A chat with many of the Republicans. And one of those Republicans that's a little under the radar, very understated, but very smart, very savvy, is Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson. At the Iowa State Fair, he talked about his plan to secure the border, and here's how he described it.
I was head of the charge of border security during the Bush administration. We didn't get it perfect, but it looks perfect compared to what we see today. And so I know what needs to be done. You put the resources there, you reform our asylum laws, and you designate the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations.
So Asa Hutchinson, he's one that will be interesting to watch. Obviously, he doesn't have a lot of traction, doesn't have a lot of name ID. He was actually someone at one point before 2016 who was often mentioned as a potential presidential nominee. And then, of course, things got sideways in 2016 and 2020. But he is someone who is incredibly thoughtful, and I find him worth listening to. He's governed. He understands what it takes. He gets the big picture and knows how you actually go about executing a plan. He's got a long, tough road ahead, and the question for him will be whether he can have the financing, the funds, to stay in the game and to keep the conversation going. Now, one candidate who's getting a lot of attention in Iowa is South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. He covered many topics during his Fairside chat with the governor, and they spoke about one of Tim's most passionate issues, school choice.
I started the School Choice Caucus 8 years ago. Education is the closest thing to magic. The good news about America, our future is not dependent on the color of your skin. It's dependent on the quality of your education. One of the things that people miss in the school choice conversation, I believe in public schools. Yeah. I also believe in competition. And so I want competition to improve our public schools. Give parents the choice, and their kids get a better chance.
Competition, choice, chance, those are all messages that Tim Scott has been pounding there at the Iowa State Fair. And as many here in the state of Utah begin school, I think that's an important part of that conversation. And I love the way Tim Scott framed it in terms of the future not being dependent on skin color, but on the quality of education. And I actually think he's right. Education is one of the closest things to magic we have on the planet today. Senator Scott also talked about an important strategy about lowering crime in the country and the kind of legislation he's been introducing in the United States Senate.
My legislation simply does simple things like, number one, best training, best resources, and the best wearing the badge. The thing about crime is intra-racial. How about this? How about we quit thinking about the guy or the girl creating the crime and start thinking about the victims of the crime? Why not have a victim's bill of rights? Let's find a way to get rid of these no bail areas of the country, get rid of those weak DAs, and get back to law and order.
Finally, Senator Scott laid out his top priorities if he were elected president of the United States and why he's the leader the country needs.
Protecting our economy is job one. Protecting America, from my perspective, means backing the blue, closing our border, and standing toe-to-toe with China. I'm ready to be your commander-in-chief on day one, not only because of those three reasons, but perhaps more importantly, I recognize that America is great because America is good. And the goodness of America can be found in the pages of our foundation.
That's Senator Tim Scott, again, part of the Iowa State Fair. We've been covering all of the candidates as they have made their pilgrimage to the Hawkeye State, having those conversations with the governor, which I think is a great thing. I think the more times you're in front of real voters in real places, in real settings, the better. And I think Senator Scott, Asa Hutchinson also had really great conversations that I think are important, part of the dialogue. And they're not just the sound bites. They're not just the slick ads on TV or what you catch on the internet. These are opportunities to have real up-close, face-to-face conversations about real kitchen table topics and issues. And I think that's an important part of that process. Now, there's one candidate in the GOP field who has not been in the Hawkeye State for the Iowa State Fair this week, and that is New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Of course, his main campaign angle has been to be a counter to the former president, Donald Trump, but during his campaign events, he also pitches his own agenda to the American people, and I think that sometimes gets overshadowed with his toe-to-toe going back and forth with the former president. And I think it is important to look at what are the things beyond just the Christie-Trump battle, and what are the principles and what are the policies. So during a town hall, not in Iowa, in New Hampshire, where the New Jersey governor is really setting up shop, and that's actually been gaining in the polls there. Some of the polls in New Hampshire actually have Chris Christie moving into second place behind the former president. But at a town hall in New Hampshire, Chris Christie gave his strategy for combating the inflation that is hobbling the economy.
The inflation that all of you have put up with over the last 2.5 years is unacceptable. And it was predictable because Joe Biden was just spending more and more and more money. And he drove that inflation way up. And now everything you pay for is 17% higher than it was when Joe Biden became president. And there's no easy way to fix that, everybody. The only way to fix it is to reduce government spending. And every government program has a constituency. But I'd rather have you be able to afford to put food on your table, to pay for the roof over your head, than to have that money be wasted and spent in Washington, D.C. I've done it in New Jersey, and I'm unafraid to do it again in Washington, D.C., and that is what we'll do.
So that's Chris Christie in New Hampshire. Again, he's really staking his candidacy on his ability to do well in New Hampshire. And it is nice to hear him talk about something other than the former president and actually get to some of the principles and policies, which is where I think the rubber really hits the road. So those are the latest from the campaign trail as we march our way towards the 2024 election. And obviously the Republican side is still jostling for a lot of positioning as it relates to who that nominee might be. President Biden, of course, gave a speech today on the Inflation Reduction Act, the one-year anniversary of that, and admitted himself that the naming was probably not quite right because it really wasn't about inflation. It was about a lot of other things that were good things, that were popular with the public, to be sure, but they definitely weren't about fighting inflation or reducing the deficit and the debt. All right, we're going to go ahead and step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news, but don't go anywhere. We're always looking for coalitions and unique groups that come together. We have one coming up that you never would have imagined. You don't want to miss this. Stick around. Inside Sources coming up after the break on KSL News Radio.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. An overwhelming day for thousands of Utah kids going back to the first day of school. Granger High School Student Body President Sherith Perez says getting involved in extracurricular activities help her find a place at Utah's largest high school.
That's definitely the biggest deal because I feel like once you join into like clubs and like sports and everything like that, it definitely helps you to be able to communicate with others. It helps you build like much more friendliness towards other people.
Principal Tyler Howe also urges kids to get enough sleep and focus on being kind as they work to grasp their school identity. Firefighters from the Lone Peak Fire District were on their way to Texas when they came across a Navajo Nation fire crew fighting a structure fire. They stopped and offered to help and wound up carrying water to the scene from the nearest hydrant, which was 5 minutes away. One member of the Lone Peak crew is Navajo, grew up on the reservation. He said in a tweet he was honored to be able to help. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. In Georgia, the Fulton County District Attorney has proposed a trial date in March for former President Trump and his 18 co-defendants. They're accused of engaging in a criminal organization aimed at overturning the 2020 presidential election. ABC's Catherine Falders has more.
Of course, this process might change a bit for the former president, given the security around him. But what's not likely to change is where he's going to be booked, which is the jail across the street, and then where potentially that first appearance will be, if it will be in person, if it will be over Zoom. A lot of those logistics are still being sorted out between all of the parties involved in this.
The former president is also facing criminal charges in Washington, Miami, and New York. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing the trading day down 180 points. The NASDAQ was down 156. The S&P 500 down 33. And our KSL weather, some thunderstorms are moving up from the south. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
Mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. We're here in the dog days of summer. Yes, the month of August. And you know, to get that perfect steak, you don't have to be out there in the hot weather. You don't have to be slaving over that barbecue. All you have to do is get into Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and they do all the work for you. They do all of the prep. They do all of the grilling. They do all of the cleanup. And you are going to have the best steak you have ever had at either location, 275 Southwest Temple, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City. A lot of people, of course, like to combine the Ruth's Chris experience with something going on downtown, maybe a concert, just a simple movie. And then there's Hotel Park City. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, if you're going to be up in Summit County, going for a hike, just getting away, going to the outlet stores, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, Hotel Park City. The best steak you have ever had is waiting for you right there at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Attention smart homeowners. You don't have to fall for flashy promises and companies that don't even prove their work.
At Your Service Pros uses third-party verification software called MeasureQuick to ensure your new HVAC system is installed correctly. This ultimate game changer in the HVAC industry lets you, the homeowner, have proof of how your system was installed. At Your Service Pros utilizes our Bluetooth tools to upload all of your system's information into MeasureQuick. We rely on data-driven insights to properly commission, optimize, and fine-tune your HVAC system for peak performance, improving your family's comfort, lowering your utility bills, and extending the life of your HVAC system. With rebates and tax credits available totaling more than $7,500 on a dual fuel heating and cooling system, it is now more important than ever that your HVAC system be installed correctly. So call us today at 801-YOUR-PRO. That's 801-YOUR-PRO. Have the peace of mind of saving up to 50% on your new system and knowing it's installed correctly by calling 801-YOUR-PRO.
Where does a journey to wellness begin? Do you start looking for diet ideas? Or searching for exercise plans? Actually, you don't have to look far. Just look to the first two letters of the word wellness. We means you don't have to figure it out yourself. It means your hopes and challenges are a perfect match for our knowledge and resources. It means anything you want to achieve, together, we can achieve better. Because wellness begins with we. Intermountain Health. The power of we.
The UACPA supports certified professional accountants in Utah through ongoing professional education and leadership development for an ever-changing financial world. Find a CPA at uacpa.org.
Traffic and weather brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have a crash on northbound I-215's westbound about 2100 north. Two right lanes of travel are blocked, and we are seeing delays back to the I-80 junction. When it comes to trusted, affordable auto care, nobody does it better than Burt Brothers Tire and Service. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, monsoon moisture bringing thunderstorms to southern and central Utah today. They'll likely move north tomorrow. Today's high 97, 98 tomorrow, 92 on Friday. Right now it's 93 degrees and sunny at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM at KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as we look to Washington, D.C., of course, we're always looking for different groups and coalitions, people who are coming together around common issues. And every once in a while, we need to just exhale in the middle of all of the doom and gloom and the heaviness that happens in our nation's capital. Sam Stein, who is Politico's White House editor, hit it out of the park with a brilliant piece about a pretty interesting club in D.C. that have exactly one thing in common. And Sam joins us on the line. Sam, thanks for jumping on.
Thank you for having me on to discuss this critically important issue. I do appreciate it.
This is the most important thing anyone's going to hear today, because it's about a group that has come together around something they have in common that's a little bit of a surprise in terms of Washington politics. Give us the story.
Okay, so the story is extremely weird. I just want to warn the viewers. It's a club of D.C. politicos who are all named Doug. And that's literally the entire story. They are named Doug. Now, I think most people would say, Sam, why would you write a story about this? This is totally pointless. There's no meaning. There's no significance to it. It's actually just a first name. And my answer to that is yes. It is meaningless and pointless, but for the fact that this group of Dougs have created this weird kind of bond with each other that transcends partisanship, that has forged interesting and constructive relationships, that is kind of in a weird way creating this template for what a better Washington, D.C. might actually be. And on top of that, they have these quirky shared personality traits. They root each other on, and to a person they think, they are having a moment. Dougs are not that common, and they're actually ascendant right now.
It is a Doug moment, to be sure. And I will tell you, everyone, as you listen, this is some of the best writing you're going to read all week long. This is some really fantastic putting it together. And so let's start with where you began your piece in Politico, and that is with another Doug, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, who's having his own little moment as he mounts his run for the presidency, and then you went into some history in terms of political Dougs. Give us that part of the story.
The basis of this story actually it did not involve Doug Burgum. He was not the launching pad, although he was the lead of the story. The reason I got put on this story was that this top press person for Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is a guy named Doug Andres. And Doug Andres is, and I think this, I'm putting it mildly, obsessed with other Dougs. He just cannot stop talking about Dougs, and when they succeed, he's joyful on Twitter about it. He's called 2022 and 2023 both the year of the Doug. Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, he insists is huge in Japan. I'm not sure how he would know that. It just didn't make any sense to me. Anyway, so I've been following Doug Andres and his infatuation with other Dougs, and I've always thought it was kind of humorous. And then I sort of looked around and I started talking to some other Dougs about it, and they were like, yeah, like, we share his sentiment about our brethren. And then on top of that, Doug Burgum, as you noted, North Dakota governor, started, chipping away at the Republican primary and gaining a little bit in the polls. Now, of course, he's not going to win the nomination, but he qualified for the debate stage. He, registered in the polls in Iowa and in New Hampshire. And suddenly, it seemed like everything that Doug Andres had been dreaming of was coming to fruition, and I felt like it needed to be storified, and that's why I wrote this piece.
And you have storified it in an extraordinary way, and so let's get into some of those Dougs, both past and present, that everyone should be thinking about at the top of the Doug list in a Doug moment.
Right. Okay, so the crazy part about this, and I just want to stress this to the readers, the reason that Dougs are like this is because Doug is like that rare name where you probably know a Doug, but you don't know many Dougs. Like, it's not that common, but it's common enough that they're around. But when I did the reporting on this, I talked to the historian himself at Doug Brinkley, about whether we've ever had a very prominent political Doug, if there's ever been a Doug that's run for president before, because I was sort of curious about Doug Burgum. And Doug Brinkley told me, no, there's only been two Dougs who've ever put their name in the ring for president. One was not really in it. That's General Douglas MacArthur. He was floated in 1948 as a candidate, never actually announced. And the other was former Virginia Governor Doug Wilder, who did actually launch a bid in 1992 for the Democratic nomination, but he withdrew his campaign before voting began. And that's it. Like, there's only been two people named Doug who've ever run for president before. Neither of them have made it to the stage where there's a vote cast for him. And so, Burgum is a historic Doug in that sense. He will almost certainly make it to the Iowa caucus. He'll be on the debate stage. He will be the first Doug in our nation's history to have a vote for president cast for him. So that was first and foremost. And then from there, I started getting names and calls. And, there's a bunch of Dougs who have been recently famous for, good and bad reasons. Doug Ducey was interviewed by the special counsels for the January 6th investigation. Doug Mastriano infamously lost the Pennsylvania gubernatorial primary. There have been two recent chairs of the Congressional Budget Office named Doug Elmendorf, who served under Obama, and Douglas Holtz-Eakin, who served under George W. Bush. And what I found out was kind of interesting is that these Dougs, they've kind of found each other. So Holtz-Eakin and Elmendorf became friends, even though they served for different administrations of different parties. There's a couple operatives, one Democrat, one Republican, named Doug Thornell and Doug High, who have become close social friends and acquaintances outside of their respective politics. And I started asking, well, is it because you share a name? And they're like, well, yes, but also we feel, and this is, I'm not joking, they said, we feel we also share personality traits. And so they all kind of got together and they all basically worship who I call the Grand Duke of all the Dougs, which is Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman.
So many, and the story goes on. You get into some of the pop culture. Of course, no conversation about Doug could be left without Liberty Mutual and Doug and Limu Emu. I think that's.
Did you know? Just out of curiosity, did you know about that? I mean, I kind of saw the commercial. It never registered to me that it was Doug and Limu Emu, but every Doug knew this, and they kept mentioning it to me.
And actually, what you have to know is it's Limu, Emu, and Doug. So Doug is second on the ticket. But don't tell the Dougs.
No, that's classic Doug, right?
Yeah.
You're always second, even to the emu.
Hey, before I let you go, Sam, give us a takeaway, because I think there's some great principles in here that we should be applying in our nation's capital and in our own communities. What's the real takeaway from this Doug moment that we're having?
All right. In all sincerity, I do think there is a takeaway. I mean, there's two takeaways. One is sort of the meta takeaway, which is I think this piece was interesting to people and was consumed by people precisely because we're at a point in our time where we do need a little levity, right? Like we need to have something irreverent to read and to consume. We have so much serious stuff happening around us and important stuff too. But at some point in time, it helps to just sort of unwind and unplug and read something a little light and lighthearted. And, I think that's why this piece did well. The second thing, though, which I thought about a little bit as I was talking to these Dougs, was that, there's something noble and interesting about, and they all describe themselves this way, about being someone who can help and enable others. This is why they all love Doug Emhoff. To them, Doug Emhoff is this great example of, like, what being a Doug should be, whatever that means. And by that, they meant he's happy being second fiddle to his more famous wife. He's happy to take the load when needed. He's happy to do interesting tasks, fun tasks, and he always seems to have, a good time doing it. He's not taking himself too seriously, but he is seriously committed to the work he's doing. And, look, the Dougs don't have a monopoly on that disposition. I hope not, at least. But, I do think that's an admirable thing to do, an admirable way to approach your job. And for them, that's something that they strive for. I think it's something that they wish more DC was comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I think that's the legit takeaway of this, in addition to being a fun, irreverent read.
It is a fantastic piece. It is great thinking, great writing, and there are even more principles in there that are really true that we all should be applying. Sam Steins, Politico's White House editor. Sam, thanks for making this Doug moment happen. And
I appreciate
there's very few Boyds in the world, so I will look forward to that being your next piece.
I'm on it. Thank you so much.
Great perspective. It is a great read there at The Atlantic. You should check that out. And the interesting thing is at Politico, as you look at that read from Sam, and as we look at all of this in terms of what it actually means, the lessons in there are many in terms of leading from any point on the compass, to not always having to be in the spotlight, to just be willing to do some of the hard work and heavy lifting kinds of things. There's many great principles in there, and it's worth it. And it's a lighter read. It's just a fun read. And we need a little bit more of that. And so we're going to step aside for one last commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to stay with the laughter conversation and why exhaling, laughing, disengaging is an important part of being able to engage and move forward. Stick around. More Inside Sources coming up next.
You thought there'd be a real estate crash, didn't you? And you thought you'd be able to buy a house for less money and at a lower interest rate, right? Sorry, the crash didn't happen. You see, there's a shortage of homes in Utah and Idaho, and that's why prices are stable or even going up 5 to 10%. If you keep waiting for the crash, it's just going to cost you more money. That's why you need to get a hold of Rick at loansbyrick.com today. If the going interest rate is 6 to 7%, don't panic. In the next 1 to 2 years, Rick will probably be able to help you refinance your home mortgage below 5%. If you find your dream home, don't wait. Today's interest rate will not be your forever interest rate, and home values will go up. So if you wait to buy it, it will cost you more money in the long run. Here's the guy who can sort it out for you. Rick at loansbyrick.com. Call or text Rick at 801-809-SAVE, 801-809-SAVE, or click loansbyrick.com.
Rick Kirschenbaum, NMLS 241179 and Vintage Lending, NMLS 287106 are equal housing lenders. Some restrictions apply.
Warmer weather is here, and Skinny Utah would like to help you shape up for summer by losing 20 pounds in the next 40 days. That's right, 20 pounds in as little as 40 days. That's the Skinny Utah promise. Skinny Utah will customize every plan because no two bodies are alike. Their proven program is 100% natural. There are never any prepackaged meals or shakes to buy, and they never use dangerous drugs or hormones. Skinny Utah will teach you how to eat real food you buy at the store. Take the first step to a healthier new you and schedule your free weight loss strategy session at skinnyutah.com. A $300 value, absolutely free. Skinny Utah has offices in Draper, Orem, Centerville, and St. George, and they're extending their couple special, where the second person is half price. Schedule your free weight loss strategy session today at skinnyutah.com. That's skinnyutah.com. At Skinny Utah, you have nothing to lose but the weight.
At Shane Company, we believe everybody is made to shine. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. Your moments, your milestones, your love story all deserve to shine bright. You don't need an occasion. You and your life are the event. So put on earrings that make you sparkle, diamonds that light up the room, an heirloom you'll treasure for years to come. We're all made to shine. Shane Company, fine jewelry since 1929.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Summer might be over for the kids, but summer's not over for your air conditioners. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and we still have plenty of hot days left. So if you haven't had your air conditioner serviced yet, I got some good news for you. Today, Wednesday, August 16th, Any Hour Services is having a surprise one-day sale for any homeowners listening. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your air conditioner, but if you call today and mention this ad, we'll tune up your air conditioner for only $29. That's a $95 savings. Call Any Hour Services right now at 801-443-7400. Manufacturers say that annual maintenance can help your air conditioner cool your home better and prevent unexpected breakdowns. 801-443-7400. The biggest reasons people don't get their air conditioner serviced each year is because they forget. So right now, while you're thinking about it, call Any Hour Services, lock in a $95 savings, and schedule a $29 air conditioner tune-up. Call Any Hour Services right now at 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
DQ presents... That's the sound of someone seeing the DQ $7 meal deal. And that's the sound of someone deciding if they want the original cheeseburger or 3-piece chicken strips with their $7 meal deal. And that's the sound of someone digging into their choice of original cheeseburger or 3-piece chicken strips, plus regular fries, a drink, and a sundae. Sounds pretty good, right? Grab the full-size $7 meal deal only at DQ. Happy tastes good.
Dave and Debbie.
Where do people in Utah have an opportunity on a regular basis to voice their opinions? That's on our show on KSL News Radio. You have a way to share your experiences and to get your message out to the entire community. Where else in Utah can they go? Nowhere. That's on our show.
We have to be so careful not to take things out of context. It's very easy to manipulate what someone says to fit your own narrative. And we don't want to do that. We want to take your best argument, you take my best argument, and if we don't always say it perfectly, that's okay. It's a conversation. It's a give and take.
Listeners call the show and are willing to share how they're dealing with life circumstances. This is why our show is so important to this community and why our listeners are so important to KSL News Radio.
Listen for Dave and Dejanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, outdoor watering banned in Manaway until the city can get its main well fixed. All water use was banned for a short time this morning. Second, a high school in Cedar City had a lockdown on the first day of school. It ended after a suspicious person was taken into custody. And third, the State Department says it's willing to talk to North Korea about bringing an Army private home after he crossed the border. Right now, 91 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson, and as we round out the program today, we've had some real critical conversations today on a wide range of topics. We've looked internationally to Iran and China, important conversations there in terms of the $6 billion that was unfrozen, assets going to Iran in exchange for not the total freedom, but at least out of the horrible prison conditions and to a house arrest situation, hopefully leading to a return. But a lot of downstream ripples and ramifications of that, including nuclear, in terms of the Ayatollah's ability to finish the job that they see as becoming a nuclear nation. And so there's a lot of things to unpack and unravel as it relates to what's going on there. It's unfortunately, I think it makes U.S. citizens less safe. And I don't know that it does anything to really bolster our national security in the process either. It's part of this ratcheting down factor that the administration seems to keep going back to. We also talked about China with Olivier Knox from the Washington Post. And I'm telling you, a preview of coming attraction. You look at the number of young people in China who are unemployed. They've actually stopped reporting 16 to 24-year-olds that are unemployed in China because they didn't like the numbers, so they just don't report them anymore. They also have something that should sound eerily familiar to our own backyard here in the United States, and that is that we have more people retiring and fewer people entering the workforce. And those numbers just don't add up in the end. And then you look at the interconnectedness of the United States economy and China's economy and the global economy for that matter. And there's a lot to be worried about, a lot to be concerned about. Of course, the president took to the stage today, and ironically, interestingly, not a single cable news network took it live as he celebrated the one-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act. And I think part of that is the president himself sort of torpedoed his own message just a few days ago when he said that it shouldn't have been called the Inflation Reduction Act because it doesn't reduce inflation. It actually became a driver of inflation. Any of the inflation that has actually gone down has been the result of the Fed raising interest rates. He also talked about it in terms of the context of it's actually added to the debt and deficit spending. So it's not helping on that front either. So a little bit of a misnomer in the misnaming of the Inflation Reduction Act, and the president's trying to navigate that. Again, politically, it's become a challenge in the fact that no national coverage happened on the president delivering that speech on the anniversary of what has been touted as a signature piece of legislation. I think that's pretty telling. I think that's important to take a look at. Now, as we're coming down the home stretch today, we just wrapped up a great conversation with Sam Stein from Politico. And if you missed that, you just need to go back and listen to the podcast later today. It is about an amazing new coalition, because we're always looking for these coalitions, these unique coalitions that come together. And this is the coalition of Dougs, people named Doug. From the press secretary for Mitch McConnell, Doug Imhoff, of course, is the second gentleman. And you can go on through the list. Very lighthearted, but some very important principles in there in terms of laughter, exhaling, not taking ourselves too serious. So you should give that a listen as well. And we're going to do that for the last few moments of the program today because life is never perfect. There is great value, tremendous value in laughter. I think it's one of the most important things we do every day. And days we don't do it are days that are a little bit longer, a little bit slower, a little bit more stressful, a little bit rougher. And with all the challenges that we face as individuals, as families, as communities, as a country, I really think a little laughter could actually go a long way these days. There's so much division. There's so much divisive rhetoric that we need to get back to just taking ourselves a little bit lighter, little exhale. Abraham Lincoln noted it, I think, best. He said, "With the fearful strain that is on me night and day, if I did not laugh, I should die." And that's a true thing. You think of all that Lincoln carried, all of the weight and the pressures of the nation. And he said, that's heavy. That's a fearful strain night and day. And laughter became an important antidote for him to keep going, because laughter always lifts the heart. It enlightens the mind. I think it actually strengthens the soul. And Sadly, in a very politically correct world, we just have to be careful that we don't become so serious that we forget to laugh, especially at ourselves. I firmly believe that a good joke, a funny prank, a silly story can make a bad day good and a good day great. A great mentor of mine, Hugh Pinnock, actually taught me, I think, the most important lesson. He said it this way: creating laughter is a noble quest. As long as no one gets hurt and there isn't any property damage, then it is a gift to both the receiver and the giver. I think that is a very wise statement for the day, that really having some laughter, it is a noble quest, and a good set of monikers there as well. As long as no one gets hurt and there's no property damage, then it's a gift to both the receiver and the giver. And truly the most memorable moments in our lives always include the laughter found in